Focusing on next big segment, gents. USMNT time. The international break is back, and Gregg Berhalter is back. He's back in charge of the US side. He's back on the sidelines after everything that went on, the recruitment process, and US Soccer decided he is the best man to lead this very, very talented golden generation, if you will, of American players. And they have friendlies against Uzbekistan and Oman, which you can watch in Spanish in the USA on Peacock and on Telemundo Universo. So make sure you get involved in that. And we'll have full coverage here on PST of those two friendly games. And Nick, what do you think about the state of the USMNT right now? Because I'd say it's been really positive in terms of the European core, the star players, Pulisic, Musa, McKennie, Weah, Balogun, even Tyler Adams, chuck that into the mix, and Brendan Aronson. These guys have got excellent moves over the summer, or in McKennie's case, gone back to Juve, and they all seem like they're going to play regularly at big teams in Europe. So it's really been quite positive, I think, from a playing perspective. We focus on that first and then focus on Berhalter's return after. So the player pool, right, is in a pretty good spot right now.
Yeah, I think that's the right place to start, too. And the reason I say that is going back to an old college basketball coach here in Buffalo, who's at Buffalo and then Canisius, Reggie Witherspoon. And what he famously said, I remember asking him at one point about an inbounds play that worked really well. You know what he told me? He deflected credit to himself and said, Nick, it's about Jims and Joes, not X's and O's. And this U.S. team, it's going to be very difficult for them to be bad. That's not to say they can't do it. We've seen it. But the moves they're making, seeing Weah get his way at Juve and getting onto the pitch, seeing McKennie earn his spot back. I mean, he is like unkillable there. Managers are like, we're going to get better than him. And they look at the market and be like, we don't have better than him. And there's so much talent over there. And to see call-ups from Palermo in Serie B and Tanner Tessman now as well, taking the place of Johnny Cardoso. I mean, it's a full-time job just tracking these players. I feel like Gregg Berhalter and his staff actually in some ways need to refer to like our cheat sheets on some of our websites, right, where it's telling who's playing where this weekend. So, yeah, I probably went on too long there. I could have just said great depth, great moves, and, man, it's bright. It is a bright time.
Yeah, definitely. Even the guys at, PSV, Tillman, Dest, and Pepe as well will go in there, be playing in the Champions League. Great moves, regular football. And you're right. I feel like Gregg Berhalter and the US soccer staff, almost like Jason Bourne-esque, the way they're just going around Europe, just checking in on all these guys, all those great European cities. And just it's magnificent to see, as we said before, in Pulisic's case and a few of the other cases, they were at teams where they weren't going to get the chances they wanted, or perhaps there was a narrative around them at certain clubs, and this summer seemed like the right time to move after a positive World Cup mid-season last year, and it's all worked out great for these US players so far. All right, Andy, the big question, focusing on Gregg Berhalter being back.
Yeah.
How do we feel? Because putting the off-pitch issues to one side, is there an argument that he deserves this, given the performance in the World Cup, and they got to the last 16, played pretty well in the group stages? It's kind of 50-50. I think if you ask most US fans, they'll be sat on either side of the fence, and it really does divide opinion, doesn't it? So what is your opinion on Berhalter being back?
Yeah, well, you're right. He's getting around Europe and seeing some players. He's not made his way to Dortmund yet, has he? So we hear. And interestingly enough, we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, when Gio Reyna is available to come back into the team and how that goes. Yeah, the depth exists, I think, a lot because of Gregg Berhalter and what he's done as USMNT head coach. And that's not to say he's developed these players, but he has brought a lot of players in systematically at times where a lot of people, and probably us included, have said, why is he calling in X player? Why is he calling in Y player? We know who this player is. And I think Gregg Berhalter has ideas. And I think that he's very committed to them, and he wants to see things out. He wants to see out projects that he starts. And so he's brought a lot of players into the team, and some of them have just steadily moved up and up and up the ranks and become important players. Who would have thought Miles Robinson would have been a player that going into the World Cup, we said, wow, U.S. really in trouble without Miles Robinson being available because he tore his Achilles. Like, he's done that kind of all over the field, and these players have become maybe not starters and maybe not stars, but important pieces of the team. And I think if you look at the World Cup, and it's all about your expectations. What did you expect them to do going into the tournament? And that is going to kind of paint the picture of how you view what they did at the World Cup. Round of 16 is probably exactly where a team like this should have been. But once you get into the tournament, you get caught up in that, and then you see the fine margins, and I think it becomes very easy to say, well, if this idiot head coach hadn't done this or hadn't done that, then they would have won that game, and then they would have had an easier matchup in the quarterfinals, and they might have been in the semifinals. That's not how it works. It's still a game that's played on the field, and there was progress that was made at the World Cup, in my opinion, getting those players big tournament experience, and the fact that all the players, almost to a man, have come out and said either we're very happy that he's back or we're kind of campaigning for him to be brought back. I think it says a lot in the way that they view this project as still very much unfinished and still a long way to go, and I think that there's just a new mindset with this young team as they're becoming, a lot of them are hitting their prime, the prime portion of their career now. And I think they have an understanding of there's a legacy to build for this group, because this can be the group that takes the U.S. men's national team and U.S. soccer to a whole nother level that we've talked about and dreamed about for years and decades.
On that note, Nick, what would be success for the USMNT in the next 12 to 18 months? Obviously, we know more than likely they have to qualify through UEFA Nations, CONCACAF Nations League action to get into the Copa America next summer. So it's probably going to happen. That's kind of a big benchmark, right, on where they're at under Berhalter. And I feel like for that tournament, anything other than making the semi-final on home soil is kind of a disappointment. And there's some great teams in that region in South America, so that's going to be tough. But it feels like that needs to happen for them to take the next step. As Andy mentioned, great to get to the last 16. Kind of felt like where they should be at. But now it's time for the next step with all these great young players, maybe not so young anymore, and in their prime in big teams in Europe. So this is a big, big kind of 18 months for Gregg Berhalter.
It's huge. And I just have so many concerns. I'm shocked. I'm not shocked. I'm bewildered by the decision to bring him back. I don't think it's going to kill him. I hope it's a little bit different than the Vlatko situation where the player said, yeah, but we really like this guy. But they need a statement win under him. And I know it's not his fault that they haven't been able to really play anyone besides Mexico except for the World Cup, right? But like we've seen them struggle against Switzerland. We've seen them struggle against Japan. I need to see something that lets me down the right path. And so it all comes back to Copa America. I was going to say they need to win a knockout round game, but whatever. If they're in the group stage and they get to play against Brazil and they lose to someone, even if they lose to Messi in a knockout round game. But I need a statement win from him. He's got a lot of chances. They should really, on U.S. soil, beat Uzbekistan and Oman. That there's no question there. But next month is another story. And so I need to see him show me, because 2026 is the question. The World Cup is the question. You're on home soil. This generation who's going to be in their absolute prime, even if dudes get hurt, you need to make a run. I'm expecting at a minimum quarterfinal at that World Cup should be the expectation. So if you can't show me before then that you're capable of beating an elite team that isn't Mexico, see ya. And I think Matt Crocker probably has to be thinking the same way. If he wanted to hire somebody else, he had to show the players that he cared about what they thought. So if there's a big hiccup at Copa America, I think it gives him an out clause.
True. It comes at a pivotal point in that cycle towards the 2026 World Cup. And I think it's a great benchmark for where they're going to be at and what they're kind of capable of as a group and the coaching staff, and to see if they've developed just as much as they hope the players have developed as well. Next month we've got Germany and Ghana in friendlies for the US. So that's, again, a big step up in competition. And that's going to be interesting. I think that's going to be a really good benchmark as well of where this US squad is at. So remember, head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. We'll keep you updated of all the latest US men's national team news ahead of the friendlies, all the tournaments coming up. And with Gregg Berhalter back in charge, it'll be really intriguing to see how this talented young squad reacts to that, develops, and if they can take that next step after what was overall a positive World Cup performance. But as Nick and Andy both said, we now need to see more and see them take that big push towards the 2026 World Cup on home soil. So it's It's going to be interesting, as always, to watch the USMNT in action.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.